Welcome to Fan Expo and this special Star Trek event that we're about to get started. Glad to see so many of you here, so many Trekkies out there like myself. By way of a quick introduction, my name is Todd Vanderhaven and I'm a news anchor with CTV News here in Canada. But more importantly today for this event, I am a huge Star Trek fan and have been for the better part of 30 years. I've watched every episode of every series, all the movies, many, many times over, and I'm a huge fan of the reboot as well. It is a huge honor for the folks at Fan Expo to think of me to be the MC tonight at this event. The people we're going to have up here on stage, of course, are science fiction legends that need no introduction. They are trailblazers, they are pioneers, they've broken so many barriers, racial, gender, you name it, and they've given so many of us fun and entertainment, hundreds of millions of us around the world. And as they soar through the stars on the bridge of the Enterprise, they also manage to keep their feet firmly planted on the ground, very down-to-earth people as well. We're going to bring out one, and then the other is going to come out as well. They're going to talk to you, answer questions, you name it. So without further ado, my extreme pleasure for me to welcome, of course, Mr. Sulu, George.
Not down front. VIPs who aren't here. I play to the people I love, not to the VIPs that don't show up. Thank you very much, geeks, nerds, and beloved sci-fi fans. This is an amazing gathering. And, you know, I was just awestruck by the enormity of this convention. And they told me that tomorrow is double this. Can you believe? I don't think I've ever been to a convention that's going to be that big. But that means that there are that many more people now who have been supporting this incredible creation by Gene Roddenberry. The original band. Looking around, I can tell who the original fans are. Yes, bless your hearts. 1966, you were there. And then there are those that were born after we were canceled. Life after cancellation. And now you're adults as well. And there are young convention goers that are carried on by their grandparents, and something genetic seems to happen over the years and the generations. They seem to have grown 20 years, and they automatically go like this. Thank you all very much for that devotion of, would you believe, 47 years now. 47 years. It's hard to think, but in 3 more years, in 2016, Star Trek will be 50 years old. We'll be celebrating our golden anniversary. And all of this is because of all of you. You know, because Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek. It was his imagination, his vision of our future. A good one, as opposed to so much of science fiction that shows a dystopian world, a crumbled, ruined civilization with humans just grubbing around in those ruins. Gene Roddenberry said, no, we have a glorious future ahead of us if we have confidence in our ability to innovate, to invent, to be entrepreneurial, and boldly go where we haven't been before. And that vision, yes, let's applaud that vision. It's what attracted all of us to Star Trek throughout the generations. But the fact that we've lived so long and prospered so unexpectedly is because of you fans. Gene created the show, but you created the phenomenon of Star Trek's longevity. It was your devotion, your refusal to accept, as they said, the fact that Star Trek as a TV series had low ratings. You refused to accept that, and when we went into syndication, you made the ratings soar up. And then when we became a series of movies, you supported those movies at the box office. Not only once, not only twice, but many of you kept going back like 5, 6, 7 times, and the box office exploded. So you created the phenomenon of this longevity, and we are all indebted to you. And that's why we do these conventions, to personally say thank you to you for that kind of undying devotion. And you have a lot of stories to tell, so let's open it up for your comments, your opinions, your questions, and your criticisms. Have they set up a mic so that you can... Oh, the guys in purple have the mic. Before we do that, though, let me tell you, November is going to be a very important month for me. I was here 2 months ago to do a guest shot on Lost Girl. And the show that I did my guest shot on is going to be airing in November. They haven't set the air date yet. So watch for Lost Girls, and the very first episode, I play a devilishly charming man. As charming as deep, dark, bittersweet chocolate. Bitter, but with that little touch of sweetness to it. And also, on the very first day of November, a feature film that I had great fun doing, because it's an animated one. We did the voices on it. It's called Free Birds, and it's about 2 turkeys. That alone is funny. And the movie is not a turkey. It's going to be hilarious. They go back in time to the days of the Pilgrims to try to persuade the Pilgrims not to serve turkey at the first Thanksgiving. And they have their adventures and misadventures, and they come back to present time, and they have more adventures and misadventures. And Woody Harrelson and Owen Wilson are the 2 turkeys. And I do the voice of the time capsule that takes them back and forth. So be sure not to miss that. It's opening on the 1st of November. And with that commercial note, you know, I'm a television actor, I can't resist that commercial break. Let's go into the substance. Yes, right here.
Okay, I was wondering if you had any interest in astronomy or the space program before you got to part on Star Trek, and how your interest in astronomy and space travel has blossomed or grown since.
Well, as a matter, you all heard the question. I was interested in the space program based only on what I read in the papers. But when I got cast in Star Trek, and I met, first of all, these very imaginative sci-fi writers like Norm Spinrad, Harlan Ellison, people like that, who are passionately interested in the space program, you know, I started paying more attention to it. And then, in 1976, I think it was, we, common working actors, were invited to an extraordinary historic event in human history. We were invited for the first rollout of the space shuttle, the craft that was going to link us to the space station out there. I mean, we're actors, you know. And this was an important landmark event in human history. And we were there to give witness to that. And we got up early one morning in the summer, I think late summer of 1976. And we drove out to Edwards Air Force Base, and they had a whole runway just crammed with fold-out seats like these. And the keynote speaker was the senator from Arizona, Senator Barry Goldwater, a former presidential candidate. He is a glorious orator. And he talked about the space program and how the space program not only fills him personally with the thrill of that venture into space, but its importance to America at that time. And then he said, and ladies and gentlemen, the first space shuttle that we are going to unveil today, called the Enterprise. It was a thrilling experience. And then the orchestra down there was the Air Force Orchestra. And they started playing the theme from Star Trek. And out of the hangar came this glistening starcraft. And beside it said, Enterprise. And the fact that it was named Enterprise, too, was thanks to the fans. Because NASA had originally decided to call it the Constitution, because that was the year of the bicentennial of the United States. But Star Trek fans all over the world decided, no, no, no. That's too nationalistic. We want it to capture the vision, excitement, and the thrill of space exploration for everybody on this planet. And they began a letter writing campaign, this time addressed to not NBC or Paramount Studios, but to the President of the United States and the White House, 1400 Pennsylvania Avenue. And as Star Trek fans are wont to do, the letter writing swelled to tidal wave proportions. It just inundated the mailroom at the White House. They were overcome by it, and the president at that time was President Gerald Ford. He said, all right, we give up, stop writing. It will be named the Enterprise. And so that's the craft that we saw that morning. And I can't tell you how honored we felt, to be at that landmark event. And since then, we've been blessed by many other opportunities to connect with our space program. I've visited both Cape Canaveral and in Houston and in California, and to meet, the astronauts are true heroes of our times. And I went up there to get their autograph. But before I could ask them for their autograph, they were all around me asking me for my autograph. It is really humbling to get that kind of experience. And I've become very much engaged with the space program. And, but I gotta tell you, when we first landed a man on the moon, and that was the year that we got canceled, 1969. It was kind of odd. Here was this amazing event, a human being landing on the moon and bouncing around in that spacesuit. It looked so old-fashioned. We'd done it all the time. We just sparkled and beamed out and there we were, yes, it was amazing that a man was on the surface of the moon, but why can't they hurry up and invent the transporter? So we've been very privileged to be exposed to and embraced by the space program. And earlier this year, I got another amazing treat. We were invited to SpaceX. As you know, the NASA space program is being wound down. And this amazing man, a hero of our times, a 21st century hero, Elon Musk. He invented PayPal together with others, and now he's been very successful in producing a cool-looking, all-electric, battery-run automobile called the Tesla, produced in California, my home state. And this man has now taken the place of this, the shuttle program and developed that linkage with the space shuttle. And he is an amazing guy. And so I've been very, very privileged, and I'm grateful for Star Trek having given me that unique experience. Yes, there's a hand out there. You, Mr. Vulcan.
I would like to ask you, first of all, actually, I would like to say it's privilege being St. Louis. Second of all, I would like to ask you, during your time off stage, what is your most memorable, funniest event that's happened with just you and the crew off stage?
Oh, you mean with my colleagues?
Yes.
Oh, there are so many of those. Well, just, randomly picking one. There was one convention organizer who took the four of us, Jimmy Doohan, Nichelle Nichols, Walter Koenig, and me, and organized a series of conventions called the Fabulous Four. And we went all over with the four of us. The understanding was that we would all be paid the same amount and given the same amenities, the car, and the suites, and so forth. And so I thought, well, that's a great idea. There's no competition going between us and unhappiness because one was treated better than the other. And so we did quite a few of those conventions. But at one convention, we all arrived, flew into whatever city that was, I can't remember. And we all got into the limo. Walter was on my left, Nichelle was on my right, and Jimmy Doohan was in the front. And we were sitting there and chit-chatting, and then Walter leaned over and poked Jimmy on the shoulder and said, "Jimmy, wasn't that nice of," whatever the guy's name, the organizer's name, Joe, "wasn't that nice of Joe to give us that $1,000 bonus at the last convention?" and Jimmy Doohan said, well. And Walter said, "Remember that $1,000 bonus?" And Jimmy said, oh, yeah. He saw Walter's wink. He said, "Yeah, oh yeah." I thought, they got $1,000 bonus? And then Walter leans in front of me and says, "Nichelle, wasn't that great of Joe, that $1,000 bonus?" And Nichelle said, that she's caught on by this time. And she says, "Oh yes. I love Joe. He's such a wonderful man." And there I am sitting there. They got $1,000 each and I didn't. And I was starting to fume. But I wasn't gonna, say anything. And I just sat there, stony and silent. And then we arrived at the hotel and we checked in and they all went up to their rooms. And I asked the receptionist, "Where is Joe?" And they said, "Oh, he's in the banquet room right now." And so I stalked over to the banquet room and I grabbed Joe by the nape of his neck like this and I lit into him. And the poor man was absolutely flabbergasted. I don't know what you're talking about, $1,000. I know, we had an agreement. And I said, "Yes, we did." I thought we all had an agreement. And then, Joe's confusion seemed genuine. And I know Walter. And I said, I think someone pulled something over on me. I'm sorry, Joe. I didn't mean to pillow you like that. I know who I need to go, get to and strangle it. So that's one of the really blood-boiling experiences that everybody else thinks was funny. Yes. In the what? I will capsulize it. This is a part of not only American history, but also Canadian history. A good number of you may know about it, but there are still people that are absolutely shocked when they hear of this story. As you know, the Second World War began for us, Canadians and Americans, with the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Well, what?
2 years earlier.
Oh, yeah, in Europe, yes. But the Pacific War began with having the entry of the U.S. in the war was with Pearl Harbor on December 7th of 1941. And both nations were swept up by both terror and hysteria and racism. There were Japanese Canadians and Japanese Americans. My grandparents came from Japan to California. My mother was born in Sacramento. My father was a San Franciscan. They met in Los Angeles, and my siblings and I were born in Los Angeles. But we looked like the people that bombed Pearl Harbor. And that was our pride. This hysteria swept over North America. And in the United States, and I'm more familiar with how it happened in the United States, but something similar happened in Canada, with no due process, which means first there are charges, and then we have the right to challenge those charges in the court of law, and then if we're found guilty, then you're in prison. In our case, none of that happened. The pillar of our justice system is what we call due process. There was no due process. I just turned 5, and I remember that scary, terrifying morning. My parents got us up early, very early one morning. I was the oldest. My brother was a year younger, and we had a baby sister. They got us up early and dressed us, and my brother and I were in the living room looking out the front window. And I saw 2 soldiers come marching up our driveway, bayonets on their rifle. They stomped up the front porch and banged on the door. My father answered it, and the soldiers ordered us out of our home. My parents had small luggages prepared for us, and my brother and I and my father walked out, and we're waiting on the lawn. And my mother, who was the last to come out, came out with a large duffel bag and my sister in her arms, and tears were running down her cheeks. A child never forgets a scene like that. We were taken from our home to the horse stables of a nearby racetrack, and we were housed there for about 3 months while the camps were being built. The place stank of horse manure. Our family was taken from our 2-bedroom home on Garnet Street in Los Angeles to a narrow, smelly horse stall. That was the first of so many degradations and humiliation and just pain, outrageous pain that my parents were subjected to. But to me, as a 5-year-old, I thought it was kind of fun. I get to sleep where the horses slept. I could smell them. And you know, it was fun for me. So my real memories, I must confess, is that of a child. But for my parents, it was the most catastrophic, painful experience in their lives. We were, after that horse stable, we were sent to the barbed wire prison camps. They were really concentration camps. They were all Japanese Americans concentrated. Innocent people behind those barbed wire fences with sentry towers and machine guns. And I remember the irony of going to school in a tar paper barrack, and we began the school day with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I could see the barbed wire fence and the sentry tower right outside my schoolhouse window as I recited the words, "with liberty and justice for all." But the amazing thing is, a year into imprisonment, the government realized that there was a wartime manpower shortage. And here were all these young people that they could have had that we accused of being potential saboteurs, spies, fifth columnists. And yet, when they, as suddenly as they picked us up, they opened up the military for service by Japanese Americans. Thousands of young men and women went from behind those barbed wire fences to prove their Americanism. They had to prove their Americanism. They put on the same uniform as that of the sentries that guarded over us. They were put into a segregated all-Japanese American unit and sent to the battlefields of Europe. And they fought with incredible courage, with amazing valor. They sustained the highest combat casualty rate of any unit of the Second World War. They were used literally like cannon fodder. High casualty rates. And the American flag covered the coffins of those that perished on those bloody battlefields were brought back to their wives or their parents, still imprisoned behind those barbed wire fences. Can you imagine the pain of those wives and parents having lost their husband or their son while they fought for the country that was putting them in these prison camps? It's an incredible story of both amazing Americanism, patriotism, and shocking failure of our justice. And the fact that so many people don't know about this has moved me to work with an extraordinarily gifted composer lyricist and some playwrights. And we developed a musical on that dark chapter of American history and Canadian history. The director of this musical happens to be a Japanese Canadian, Stafford Arima from Toronto. And we opened first in San Diego, California at the distinguished Old Globe Theater, 77-year-old theater, distinguished theater company. And we got rave reviews when we opened. Almost every performance was sold out. We had spontaneous standing ovations when the curtain fell at the end of the performance. And we wound up breaking every box office and attendance record in the 77-year history of the Old Globe Theater. And we won the Best Musical of the year 2012 from the San Diego Critics Circle. And thank you very much. Now we're headed for New York and the biggest and most important stage in America, Broadway. We'll be opening next spring. say to all of you, spring is a wonderful time for a vacation in New York. You're all welcome. However, after we're nice and established in New York, we will plan a Toronto company. Because it is a story that is very, very relevant to Canadians as well. And as I said, the director is a Japanese Canadian. So those of you that don't like to wait, come down to New York next spring. And those of you that are much more patient than that, we will accommodate you with a production right here in Toronto. Because Toronto is a great theater city. My aunt married a Canadian and they've been living here for a long, long time. And I've known Toronto before a good number of you were even born. I came first in the early 50s. And yes, the original Star Trek fans were around then, weren't you? But when I first came here, the old City Hall was the City Hall here in Toronto. And then you built a new City Hall right next to it. And now that's become old. So I've known Toronto from way back then. But I also love going to the theater here because you have high quality theater and a great theater audience. And it's always good to be with a good audience when you see a play. So we will get a Toronto company, but come on down to New York and see it before everybody else. And now, I'm told one last one.
Oh, I have a microphone, so I think I'm getting it.
Oh, there you are. So you've got the question.
I got the question. I have to admit, these days on Facebook, half of my news feed is filled up with stuff from you. My Facebook page is filled up, I think, from you. I just wanted to know what got you started on your path to becoming the king of Facebook.
Well, that works right into the question I answered on allegiance. We discovered that allegiance was not too, the internment story was not too known by many people that seem otherwise well-informed people. And so we needed to, develop a level of awareness on the part of people. We put a lot of our passion and our talents and now our money into the Allegiance production. And we needed to have an audience that knew something about the subject matter. So I thought the best way to do that would be by social media. But my base back then, 3 years ago, was geeks and nerds. So how do I get that base and grow it from there? And so I started making some funny comments about science and science fiction, like, molecules. They think it's all about them, And the base started to grow. And as it grew, I started adding a few more layers. And I talked about equality for LGBT people. My audience exploded. Because there's a great overlap between sci-fi geeks and nerds and LGBT people. You're all here, I know who you are. And as it grew, that was a civil rights issue there. And so I introduced the subject of the internment of Japanese Americans, American citizens, Canadian citizens, who simply because of the way we look, were put into these prison camps. Racism, pure and simple. And so the initial impetus for starting the social media program was to, one, educate and raise the awareness of a broad audience on the internment story. And then to let them know that we built a musical about it, and we doled out a little bit of the music. We have Lea Salonga as our leading lady. Isn't she glorious? She won the Tony Award for Miss Saigon, and she is glorious in the Legions. And so we started slipping in a little bit about allegiance and about the internment story. And now we not only have people that are aware of the internment, but are excited, enthusiastic, eager audiences for the musical that we've developed. And so I just can't wait till we open in New York and see some Canadians filtering across the border and enjoying what we have done. But it has a social message as well. We've got to learn from history. History is a great teacher, and we must not forget it, and we must not ever not talk about it, but learn from it. And that was our intent. And now I know, yes, there she is. It's my real pleasure and joy to introduce a dear friend who you also know. I've known this dear friend even before Star Trek. I was doing a civil rights musical in Los Angeles, and this woman came and saw it, and she came backstage to congratulate us. And she had hair that I had never seen before. This was back in 1960, when the Afro was not known. And here was this woman with this big, bountiful, huge beach ball hair, with that stunning, glorious face. And I was struck by her. And then when we began work on Star Trek, we became very good friends, and we've been very deep friends ever since. We've shared a lot together, and she's been very generous with me, and she's a dear, dear friend. Ladies and gentlemen, none other than the inimitable Nichelle Nichols.
I could listen to George all night. Unfortunately, we don't have all night. We do this to each other since I've known him since I was about that high. He used to walk me to school. Did you tell me that? Is he gone yet? It was a lie. But I bet you knew that. Oh my goodness. There are a lot of people. I have seen less than this help the enterprise get off. Speaking of which, I'm so very excited about what its potential is. And when the space program was just getting off and was at one of its lowest points, I had been talking about the possibilities of space flight and where we were going and how Gene Roddenberry had, how beautifully he had expressed explored the possibilities and what he could have done had they not cut him off. Because they're going, what is he talking about? Outer space. Nobody's going to outer space, but not in our lifetime. That was the brilliant studio. Yes, from New York on down. But there were those who understood it. And I was one of the starry-eyed ones who knew the possibilities and wanted to explore the possibilities. Ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to grow up and be an astronaut. I didn't know it was going to be called astronaut really at that point because we hadn't really planned to go to the moon. But in my explorations, mental explorations, I knew we were. The Earth is too small to calculus. What we know or how far the imagination can go. And I always thought that's why all this space was created. For us. Because I haven't met anybody from out there yet. They haven't contacted me, and I'm the communications officer. I had a wonderful experience. I have a wonderful child, Kyle Johnson, who started the learning tree, if you ever saw that wonderful picture about the little boy's exploration of his imagination. And, but I was always fascinated with the possibilities of where we could go. And I always knew from a little girl we were going to the moon. That was a foregone conclusion. That was not a big deal. It was those other places. And how many are there in the universe? In the known universe. And I used to ask my daddy, my father, Daddy, can we go to the moon? He says, of course, it'll be in your lifetime. And I said, oh, good, because I have friends there. My father said, I'm sure you do, dear. And he always took me seriously. When I grow up, I'm going to be a star. I'm going to play all of these characters. And I'm going to do something to show people what it's like to go not only the moon, but past the moon. And I was telling this to Gene Roddenberry one day, who had cast me in a series that he had 3 years before Star Trek. And Gene said, really? And so I said, yes, and he said, let's go to lunch. I was there for a fitting for whatever we were doing. And he said, let me take you to lunch. And I said, well, I have a fitting. He said, it'll be there when you get back. And that was for Star Trek. And I didn't know why he had called me yet, because he had me to talk to told my agent. So we go to lunch near the studio, and we got to talking, and we get into this deep conversation, and I let my mind soar, and about what the possibilities were, and where we were going, how well we would do, and how Well, we might not do. If, the great if our children are educated and prepared, if we don't believe, if we don't support our space program, and it hasn't even taken off yet, we haven't gone to the moon yet. And my dad, in his inimitable way, with all of his children, he never left us off and said, well, yes, that's maybe someday. He empowered the imagination. And it was like liftoff for me. No matter what I wanted to do in my life, I wanted to be a ballerina when I was 85. And my mother would say, Samuel, don't fill in here with all of those possibilities. You know, there's never going to be a black ballerina. There's nobody on television that looks like us. So, honey, I said, but Mommy, let me go out. Daddy said, come here, honey. Chicken, called me. Chicken, little chicken. Sit here. Of course, there's going to be. Do you know why? Because you have put it in the ether. And God is listening. I said, she is. And my daughter said, she certainly is. And he never lied to me. So I knew, always knew, that we were equals. We were all going to the moon, and beyond, and beyond. And I met this man named Gene Roddenberry, who gave me my first starring role in a series that he had before Star Trek. And 3 years later, he was inviting me for this, to read for a new role. And that's when we went to talk. And so many things that happened in Star Trek, because he was still creating it. He sold it. But there's this guy at Paramount that went, okay, New York has gone nuts. They're listening to Gene Roddenberry talking about shows from outer space and black people and white people and men and women. And then he did it. He made the pilot. And it sold. And the guy at Paramount, who just knew it wasn't going to sell, thought New York had gone crazy. They lost their minds listening to Gene Roddenberry. And the guy came out to see what we were doing. The head guy from Paramount in New York. And everybody got like this. You know, when the big boss comes, when you clean off your desk and everything. He said, there's only one reason I came out is to meet Nichelle Nichols, because she's the first African-American woman in a top series. And he said, I am your greatest fan, and believe me, there are going to be multiple shows like you because you have opened the way. You have opened the way. It was then that I knew I had a responsibility, not only to my young son to bring But to all of the people who see me on television, as the first female, black female to have a leading role that sustained itself and changed the world. And I've often wondered where it would have gone if we hadn't lost Gene Roddenberry, because he had just begun to fight and create. He had ideas that would blow your mind right today, and you would have loved him. Because the response to Star Trek so startled the New York, who had the control over everything, that they went out there and go, what are we going to do? And they're the ones that integrated most of the shows because it worked. And they said it wouldn't work. New York said it wouldn't work. The top man at New York came to see what we were doing. And everybody around him was, because he's the one who can make things happen or not. And he came out and he said, I came out because I got this call that there was a problem you were having with Nichelle Nichols and Bill Shatner. In a scene they're going to be doing. We were shooting it that day. It was the first individual kiss. And so he came to meet me, and he said, I've been a fan for so long from the time that you came on TV. I want to thank you for changing the face of television forever. And my heart pounded. And I said, you mean it's not going to be a one-time thing? And he said, oh, no, not as long as I'm alive. And head of Paramount and the TV. What you've given is going to multiply, and your children's children will know. And you know what, Ms. Nichols? My children's children. And you know why I will be touched by this so deeply? Because my son and daughter watch nothing but Star Trek. And then they come and tell me what it meant and why it was so important. It was getting through to them. And he said, someday you'll know what I mean. Because you're going to be standing before thousands of people and they're going to look like everybody. We're here. To have had that relationship with that great man named Gene Roddenberry. I wondered what would have happened because he had only begun to fight when he passed away. But he left a legacy. He left a legacy. And you are it. We are it. And I see it at every convention I go to. The first conventions I went to 20 years ago. If there was one black person in the audience, it was amazing. It was all white audience, and you'd be standing there talking to them about your dreams, you know. They believed me. I would talk and I'd get applause about what I was going to do. Instead of them going, poor girl, she doesn't know she can't do that. She doesn't know what happened. They believed that we would be able to go to the moon, to go beyond, to the stars of our dreams. That we can, you can. You're already doing it. Because I used to talk to an all-white audience of Star Trek fans. It's true. And then there would be 2 or 3 brown faces. And I had my own race say to me, you're triggering. They're not going to let you do that. I said, yes, they will. They have no choice. That person came to me and said, you said Star Trek would change the face of television forever. You're right. Because you remember when we spoke and you said that will happen? It changed me. Because I went home and laughed and told my wife what you said, and my 2 kids came up and said, Daddy, what are you talking about? Of course it's going to change. I know, that's great. Look, there's Nichelle Nichols. There's Lieutenant Uhura. And Daddy, she got on being from the United States of Africa, but she represents all of us, black, white, yellow, brown, and red. Remember she said that in that speech? And the girl told me, Daddy said, you're right, honey. And she just changed me through you. What a wonderful thing. When I was told that story in a speech that I was having, the making, and she stood up and told that story. And everyone's had a story kind of like it, only there were just a few. And so I kept talking everywhere I went. I tell the story. And the stories would grow. And so did the audience. I remember talking to an audience of Star Trek fans that was all white. And then there might be 3 or 4 African Americans, brown faces back there. I was looking around like so. And I kept talking as though they looked just like you. And now, Christ, look around and look at you. You all look like me. Thank you. Because we have the power within us. And I raised my son that way, Kyle Johnson. And he grew up and starred in The Learning Tree, which was a wonderful novel that they turned into a wonderful movie. And it talked about these young men and this young man who refused to be confined by what you see with your eyes, but what you hear with your ears, and hear with your heart, and feel with your heart. For me, I've just begun to fight. And to unite. And to go where no man or woman has gone before. And to go where no man. Now, I used to talk like this to all talking, there would be a couple of Asian people that would go like that, and a couple of more of African American people or brown people who would go, yes, and then I kept talking. And you know I can talk. And it kept growing. And people would come up to me while I'm signing their autographs and tell me how a speech changed their life because they went home and told their parents, and their parents said, who have you been talking to? And they kept talking to their parents and to their friends. The same thing that we're talking about. And I wish you could stand up here and see yourself. You're the most beautiful audience I've ever seen in my life. We are who we think we can be. No less, a lot more. A lot more. And this young man, my son, who had no intentions of being an actor like Mom, because actors take moms away from their children. You know, oh. And so I started taking, I was mostly doing theater, so I started taking him with me. And he would sit in the audience, the bare audience, and we'd be up on stage practicing for a live theater performance. And his drum, and he would, Mom, can we go? No. Did you listen to what happened? On the way home, he told me every scene, everything that was done on that stage. He was listening. He was hearing. He even had some suggestions. It touches the heart to know that suddenly she's saying not only that she can, I can. And that's what the basic truth is. The almighty I can. Because somebody believes, and somebody believes, and somebody else believes. And somebody else says, I had a great idea, but I knew nothing could happen with it, but tell me about it. Listen, we're listening to each other now. We're listening to each other now. Our parents are listening to us listening. Our parents hear us now. It's no more, I'm not, yes, maybe in 30, 40 years. It's now. First thing in the morning, it's now. Last thing at night, it's now. It's what you think and what you do with what you think. Yes? It's what you think and what you do with what you think. Because it's not enough to think. We have to get up off our keister and do. And encourage young minds when they come to you going, Mommy, I was thinking, honey, don't bother me now, I have to cook. Your daddy's going to be home. Okay. Once you get that, there's one thing to do. Honey, come back, tell me what I really do want to hear it. Not let it go. And you'll see shoulders that just went like that. Go like that. Well, Mom, what I was thinking, that's wonderful, honey. What are you going to do about it? Well, I was thinking, you know, if I had $30, I could, you better get it. I could join this group, or I could do this, and I could do, well, let's see how we can make this come about. You'll have to earn it. What? What? You can earn it. I know where $30 is. But you have to earn it. Okay, what do I have to do? Now you got it. And what you have to put in there, right in there. And what you have to do is never lie to a kid. Because he's going out there, he's going to do it, this is our world. And we're leaving it to, or preparing it for the greatest minds on earth, our children. Our children. And you know who that is? It's who you were and who you grew up to be. You are our children, and our children know that when they come to you for validation, they're going to get it. If they have a good argument. Because you can't just say yes. You say, how are you going to get there? If you say they want to go across town, you say, how are you going to get there? On the train, on the trolley, I'm going to walk, or whatever. But our future is in our kids, because we are our kids. Yes? Yes. We are the future, and our children are our future. All have their say and keep them on the right track. And nothing is more beautiful than a child's dream that comes true. We are our children's children. And we are our children's future. And our children are our future. When NASA asked me to come and help and recruit the first women and minority astronauts for the space shuttle, people were outraged. Even African Americans and everybody else were going, NASA is just using me, using you. And I said, I know. And I'm using NASA. It's going to look like all of us. We are the voice. We are the people. We are the future. Is there a pregnant woman in the house? Astronauts for the space shuttle program, and I did. And George told you about them coming to see the rollout. I invited my entire cast, and George said, I had no idea. My God, this is our future, Nichelle. And I have this beautiful picture beside the at the rollout where we went with my cast there in front of it. And I knew then we are the future. Nothing can stop us. Let your goals be noble and your aims be higher than you think possible. And let nobody tell you you can't. Because you can. Because we are the future. My son, Kyle Johnson, never forgot what I told him. And he married and moved to New Mexico, and he's opening his own company. And I'm so proud of him, because I told him when he thought he couldn't, you can, and you will. Never let a small line fall in to misuse. Encourage him and tell him, you can. I know, darling, thank you. You can, and therefore you will. We will